wait for Mike.
Put your mom's.
Yeah, you're gonna keep it. Okay. Okay, I'm calling to order the meeting of the Municipal Authority, April 17, 2023. We are just back from an executive session of this board to discuss litigation matters. I'll take a roll call. Maria Kane here, Steve Mackel,
Here.
Louis Rosenthal,
Here.
Paul Montefiore, not here, and Tom Greco, not here. Okay. At this point, I will ask everybody to stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, in your packet, you had the, oh, I'm sorry, just looking at our agenda, everybody's had a chance to review that. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All right, I'll second that. Any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, at this point, we'll take public comments for agenda items only. If anybody in the public here wants to come up to the podium, give your name and address on agenda items only. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the March 2023 meeting of the Municipal Authority?
So moved. Second.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments about those minutes? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, at this stage, we'll take our reports, our treasurer's report. I don't know, Steve, are you giving that this?
I would just tell you, we're continuing to work on getting you a full set of reports for the end of last year, and then we'll get you for the full set of this year. Hope to have that for you next month. We're still running a little bit of learning curve, and we'll get that as quickly as we can.
All right, we appreciate the update. All right, and Dave Porter is with us. Dave, our engineer from McCumbee Engineering, could you provide the engineer's report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse my voice, I'm a little under the weather, so if you need me to speak up or repeat anything, feel free just to chime in, okay? First on my report is with regard to the Camelot service area and the Old Masters pump station drive and electrical construction. We have had a pre-construction meeting with the Conservation District on site with the general contractor, AP Construction, who's going to do preliminary grading ahead of Ford Brothers, who's the electrical contractor that's going to install the electrical conduit and line. We held that meeting March 24th. AP construction is scheduled to begin tomorrow with mobilization to the site and erosion and sediment controls implementation. There's 3 trees that are scheduled to be removed on the 20th that are in close proximity to the driveway. I think the concern is that their excavation and grading would impact the root system of those trees, and those trees would not make it. So those additional trees have to come down. Pico right now is scheduled for the first week in May for their transformer work. So they'll deliver the transformer, set that, and Ford Brothers will complete the electrical tie-in once the transformer is set. And we'll be scheduling startup testing hopefully in the 2nd or 3rd week in May for the pump station.
That's great. So by the next meeting, maybe.
Fingers crossed.
All right, thank
By,
you.
by the next meeting, we're hoping we'll have at least a startup test scheduled on the books, and hopefully we have good news that we can tell the residents finally we'll be able to start accepting flow.
Just real quick, all of the materials and equipment that are needed to put this road together and to bring the electric, it's already in hand or
Yes.
readily available?
Yep.
Okay.
So everything that's needed, the equipment for AP to do the grading, they've already submitted product submittals for review for the filter sock and the silt fence and the different kind of stone that needs to be implemented for the rock construction entrance. Ford Brothers, that's already been approved as part of the overall contract for electrical work for the project, and they have that in their yard ready to go.
Okay,
So
good.
we're good to go there. One thing I do want to mention related to that, to the authority, on that meeting on the 24th, while our inspector and AP construction was doing a walkthrough of the overall site, it was observed, and actually the member from the conservation district observed some liquid discharge from one of the manholes just upslope from the wet well. That kind of triggered a series of events for us to do some reconnaissance and investigation. Within about a week, we were able to determine that there was a significant amount of water that was built up in the system. We were obligated to report it to the DEP. Actually, the conservation district reported it. So we worked with the DEP to document that, that system had overflowed there with what appears to be a combination of groundwater and possibly some sanitary sewage. So we had to document that it was a sanitary sewer overflow, called in our wastewater operators to help with, pumping down the system, getting rid of the buildup liquid in the wet well, which has, to my understanding, been completed at this point. And we're working with DEP on follow-up and information related to that. Elsewhere in the Camelot service area, the authority has finally received the easement from the Suburban Swim Club. Related to that, I know there's some items on the agenda relative to the Muirwood Hills acceptance of dedication. So that easement was the last component that we needed in order to be able to accept dedication of the sanitary sewer line that will ultimately connect the Dogwood Lane and Dogwood Place houses through the Muirwood Hills community to the existing sanitary sewer out on Route 252. Without that easement, we could not have accepted the sanitary sewer that was constructed as part of the Muirwood development, because we didn't have rights to it through that small stretch of where we needed the sanitary easement for. So that's been signed by the Suburban Swim Club. The authority needs to finalize that document, have it recorded, and then we'll speak to the rest of the items relative to the dedication of the sewer later on the agenda. Just a follow-up on meeting with Evoqua, who is the bioxide vendor, and Lenai Electric relative to some of the other ancillary items that KBX had on their maintenance report. First availability for Evoqua to meet would be May 8th. So I'm going to take advantage of that opportunity and schedule a meeting with them on site. I did do some site visits with Almeida and Hudak, who constructed all of the pump stations for the authority. There's a couple of locations where it didn't appear that the bioxide was completed. One of the scenarios where it looked like the bioxide system was operational and pumping, but I didn't observe any chemical feed into the sanitary sewer system. So I asked them if they could troubleshoot while they're out there, and we do the site reconnaissance. So I will confirm that will be, right now it's tentatively May 8th, but I'll confirm that in the next couple of days. We are working on getting quotes for repair of the pavement along Pomona Avenue near Fairview. Recall, we had a resident that came in that was asking the authority to help out with some restoration. It appeared that the pavement was in pretty bad shape before the sewer project commenced, but driving large trucks over the already crumbling pavement didn't help matters. So we're looking at getting some quotes for replacing that. And Steve, with the townships, I don't know if they're doing a road program this year, but we can certainly coordinate our efforts with the township if it's cost effective that way.
We are going to do a small road program this year that probably would help to make it a little bit bigger, but we can at least put that out if you want us to.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll get you the measurements and the location, Steve, and we'll see how the prices shake out.
Yep.
Dave, 1 second. And
Yes.
So who does what on the road? And then second question, who pays for what?
So are we talking about the road specifically that
Yeah, the
Dave was
Pomona
talking
one
about?
that he was just
Yeah,
describing.
so I believe that we would be paying for that. Is that right, Dave? And when I say we, the authority?
We being an authority would pay for it, yes. If the township were to undertake it as part of the road program, the thinking is that the unit cost for that restoration would be lower because it's a larger quantity of paving that they're going to be doing.
Right. And we found that to be the case most of the time. The difference is that most of the township's work this time will be on the eastern side of the township. So, will they charge a whole lot to pick up and move their equipment from one side of town to the
Right.
other? Don't know yet. But we do have some work on this side that needs to be done. So.
Okay.
Okay, on other items that are not sewer project related, with regard to BPG and Ellis Preserve, the DEP did approve the 2 planning exemption requests, and the DEP has also authorized them to proceed with an exemption for the last component of the commercial, and that will complete their entire development over at Ellis Preserve. I know that there's still some planning documents that need to be filed and signed off on the township side. But as far as the capacity certification, we were able to document that there's sufficient capacity within the Ellis pump station pursuant to completing the Chapter 94 report for the calendar year 2022. Westchester Pike Sanitary Sewer at Dunwoody. Our survey crews were out on the 10th of April and gathered additional information for the existing sewer system in the vicinity of Dunwoody. We're in the process of putting a plan together and evaluating that data. So before the next authority meeting, we'll have some alternatives and recommendations for the authority on how to address that area, the crossing at Dunwoody at Westchester Pike. In addition to that, our survey crew also was out at French Road. Recall, this is the scenario where there's 3 houses along French that have a sanitary sewer easement in the rear yard. We're trying to determine through deeds of record responsibility for maintenance of that sanitary, what appears to be a sanitary sewer lateral connecting the 3 houses to the sanitary main that runs along the property line of the 3rd house, leaving the cul-de-sac of French Road. So the reason for the survey is, 1, to establish where exactly the sanitary sewer easement is about those lines, and 2, to document what the as-built condition of is the sewer there. So if in fact the authority is obligated to maintain it, it may be beneficial to install some kind of a clean out structure or a junction where those connections are made in order to access the line to clean it out, since there's.
How would you even get there? How would you, I mean,
What they would do to get there, to install it, or to get there to maintain it?
maintain it.
To maintain it, what you would have is a jet truck, probably stationed in the cul-de-sac, or you may need to have an easement over a private property driveway to get close enough.
That's
to
what I was sort of getting at. We may have three residents now who are comfortable with it, but we may have a
Right,
new
Yep.
owner who's saying, you're not coming across my property.
right.
What we looked
Now,
at-
if we access from French, we have the easement from French Road to go down to get to that point.
Yeah. I mean, just to interrupt for a second, Dave, I mean, didn't, we talked about it, I thought at the last meeting,
We did.
as to whether or not, there was, an easement sufficient in order to gain access.
We called the recorder of deeds and asked them to look at that. I don't think we received anything. Oh, I'm sorry. I said we called the recorder of deeds and asked them to look at that. And I don't think we received anything back, but I'll follow up on it.
All right.
See what we got.
Perfect.
And lastly, on my report, over the next day or two, you will see a couple of sample ordinances and some sample documentation for a fog program. One is from St. Peter's, where it's Peters Township Sewer Authority, not St. Peter's. Peters Township Sewer Authority is one, and that was one that was showcased, I believe, at a Pennsylvania sewer, Pennsylvania wastewater workshop that I think Jamie went to a few years back. So I have several documents there. Some of it is reporting for grease traps, sizing guidelines for grease traps, sample ordinances, and I think I have one or two other municipal authorities or townships that have a fog program that I can send to you. It's a lot of material. So I'm going to probably try to set up either a Dropbox or something where everybody can access it, either, a Microsoft OneDrive or something to that effect, so you can just go in and pull the documents down. So just keep an eye out for that.
Dave, we should get that to Rich Sikora as well, because it's going to be a township action, really.
Yes. Okay. Good point, Mike. Thank you. That concludes my engineer's report.
That I'm just to, so would the fog program apply to residential as well?
I don't know the scope of the samples. I mean, we've been talking about the grease trap piece. I'm assuming the fog program is to look for I&I on laterals as well, right? I don't know.
Well, the fog program is specifically geared to handle or deal with fats, oils, and grease, right? So part of that program would be outreach and education. So some of the previous documents I had shared with the authority relative to, don't flush this, don't flush that.
Yeah.
There's similar documents that are available, information pieces and brochures that you can send to residents, put on your website, and so on and so forth.
I mean,
it
go
kind of brings up a good point that we've got all of these new commercial entities coming in, especially, the restaurants and things where the grease trap issue is a concern. And I'm wondering if there shouldn't be like a special packet that we give to, these entities before they open, so that they have some instructions as to what can go into these lines and what can't. And I don't know.
That's an excellent point, Maria.
I mean, especially early on, and just, letting them know we're here and,
Mhm.
and letting them know the process too. I mean, when we've got these, if we determine that the grease trap is not in place properly or not being cleaned properly, and there's a problem, where we're gonna look, in order to.
It might be most efficient to get the township to act and then put that together, because it's probably gonna change once the township acts on some. grease
Perfect,
trap.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Good idea.
Okay.
All right. If that concludes your report, then we'll move on to the operations manager's report from Stephen Neese.
Yes,
The only
ma'am.
thing I had to add that wasn't in the engineer's report, just I hope you've seen the attachment that was in your agenda packet related to KBX for their operation for the month of March. And I would bring your attention particularly to the fact of just under normal maintenance, they cleaned the wet well at Camelot Pump Station and did some troubleshooting at a couple of that station and a couple others, and assisted us with making sure that the utility providers could get in and out of the station as needed. There was a problem with telephone lines, both on the Verizon side and Comcast side. Almost all of the stations have both, just as a redundancy factor.
On KBX's report, and maybe this is for Dave, but they said that they went out to the annual service for calibrate metering equipment.
Yep.
For Camelot, Lissitor, and a
Yep.
couple of others. What are the meters for?
The meters measure the flow coming out of the station
And we use them for,
for the 99 or 94 report, right, Dave?
Yes.
okay, so we don't reconcile that to what we pass to CDCA, what we get from CDCA
Well,
or.
I mean, one of the challenges is a couple of those are far enough along in the system that if you had I&I, it would probably not add up anyway.
Actually, Steve,
Yeah, it does. Go ahead.
I believe that CDCA has telemetry from I don't know if it's Ashford. I believe they had it in the old Camelot station. I believe it's been switched over to the
Yep.
new Camelot station.
I think you're right on that
They
one.
have it in Ellis. I'm not sure if they have it in Ashford or not. I would have to follow up with them, but that telemetry allows them to receive data as well.
Yep.
So they're using that data essentially to see what we're discharging to their system, even though we have to report it on an annual basis. They're using that data as a means to basically, bill us.
I thought they had another meter too, though, Dave. At the interceptor down by the Delaware County Community College.
Probably. I'm not sure about that, Steve, but probably.
I know that it became a challenge because I thought I remember it became a challenge when Edgemont connected to our line.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was just thinking of a way to reconcile.
Yeah.
What the bill is. If it's off by 2%, then you don't have a lot of I&I.
Yeah.
If it's off by 10%, we've got a
Yeah.
problem someplace.
Mhm.
Yeah. We can look into that.
That was it.
Any other questions on the report? That's all I have for you. There's a couple things further down in the agenda that I'll give you action items that we're ready to take pending your actions.
Okay. All right, then moving on. May I have a motion to approve the bills on check register A dated April 17, 2023, totaling $329,055.73. I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on, consider may I have a motion approving the following payments from the bond associated with the 537 public sewer project build out? I'm gonna list all three of these. Well, why don't I do the first one as a motion and then we'll do the engineering ones together. Does that make sense?
You can do it together.
Should I do them all together because I have the total?
Break it down, we can break it down afterwards.
Okay, all right, so I'm asking for a motion to approve $7,956 to Catania and Parker LLP for professional services associated with the Camelot service area. $187.50 to Herbert McCummy Engineers for Part 2 permit work associated with the Ashford service area. $2,174.46 to Herbert McCummy Engineers for Part 2 permit work associated with the Camelot service area. This is all from the bond associated with the 537 public sewer project build out. And I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Take it from Steve, first from Steve and a second from Lewis. Any further questions or comments on that?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right, next may I have a motion approving the $24,250 escrow release payment to John T. Stevens for a complete sewer connection at 4107 Battles Lane. May I have a motion?
So moved.
A second from
Second.
Steve, thank you. Any questions or comments on that one? Anybody want any background on that? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on to new business. Okay, this is a possible action item regarding CDCA signature request on chapter 94 capacity determination. A form for capacity determination to confirm the authority is aware of the Stony Knoll sewage plan. And Steve, is this one that you were going to give us some additional background on?
Thing that they filled this document out, and they filled it out asking for me to sign it, and which is sometimes happens. So if you do decide to approve the document tonight, it would also be helpful if you went ahead and gave me the authority to sign on your behalf for the authority.
So I read the document. There's no motion yet, but so we're maybe a little bit of background, just
Yeah, sure.
answer my questions before I ask.
Yeah, so this is for the Stony Knoll. And this is one of the reasons why it's before you. Actually, it's been before you once, I believe. It's before you again. They've changed the plan 3 times. Well, they've changed the plan twice. So they've had 3 different plans. I think the first plan that came before you was a 27 lot subdivision. And I believe, I know you passed and said that was okay. They came back and said, we're going to do, I think it was like a 13 lot subdivision. And then because the township was requiring them to put to connect the aqua line that goes down White Horse Road and bring it down to them versus coming back in only from the Echo Valley side. They said that the cost was so great that they needed to add a couple more lots as the developer to make his numbers work. And so he added, I believe it was 5 more lots to make the numbers work. And in doing so, he's now back up, I believe it's 4,050 gallons per day. And in order to, you need to approve that, and the township needs to approve that in order for him to move forward.
So are we, and so my question is only because there's a little bit of a hot potato with the planning commission.
Yep.
Right now. What are we actually approving? We're approving,
You're approving
acknowledging Delcora's letter or?
as I understand it, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, you're doing 2 things. You're acknowledging and accepting the allocation of excess flow from Melmark. Thank you. Just went blank. Excess flow from Melmark that we have accepted back and you said, we will allocate a portion of that excess flow to this project. And so, and that's what the township is also going to agree to. The capacity is already built, it's already there. Dave's already said that. You're just approving basically the capacity, but the township is allocating specifically from Melmore.
So we're actually approving this before the township actually approves the 18 units.
That's correct.
Yeah, in a lot of towns, they don't want to approve the units unless they know that there's capacity to
capacity.
handle sewage, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens in a few years if Melmar comes back and says we need more than 1,000 gallons per day? That's what they're left with once we allocate this.
They would be required to go out and do a planning, and potentially, if there wasn't enough in the system or there wasn't enough potential capacity, they would either not have enough and couldn't move forward. But they have officially released it back to you, to the township. I mean, they've let it go.
Melmar.
So, Melmar has.
And they're fully operational now, that school?
As far as I know, I don't know if have everything up and running, but they have all the capacity purchased that they need.
And
their pump station.
so
And their
was
pump
it an
station.
overestimated amount of capacity? When Melmark was doing their, I think was it a full construction or was that a renovation of an?
Well, they ended
existing-
up they were originally going to do a renovation with an addition.
Right,
They came back and it was a very old building.
right,
And to renovate the building became costly beyond what they could actually justify doing. And so they turned around and took the old building down and put a total new building in.
okay, so there's nothing over there that might be constructed or reconstructed? or
Well, I
whatever
mean,
that- Who knows,
if I-
right?
like
They gave it up.
what I would tell
They
you
threw in the
is,
towel.
they made a decision to release it. They
Yeah.
must believe that they're as full as they're going to be. But I've been here long enough to tell you that doesn't always work. But then it becomes incumbent upon them to go through the process to get additional flow. And that may mean changing something, that may mean that they can't get it. And if they can't get it, then they wouldn't be able to build it, but they've released it. And so you and the township had allocated a certain number to them. That's what they thought they needed. They came back and said they don't. And that's why that's why we have that capacity there, even though we did not actually do part of the planning for the 537 for that, the 40 acres that Nolan's
Okay,
doing.
so the process where Melmark actually built out their own system and then said, we don't need the 5,080, I think it was, gallons per day.
4,000, whatever.
Well, the new development's going to take 4,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Melmark gave up 5,000. What did they do? Did they send a letter saying we hereby give up what?
Dave, do you want to answer that? I know that they worked with you for that release.
So the mechanism by which they did that was essentially through the agreement for purchase of capacity with the municipal authority. So they identified in there specifically that they needed the 1,900 and change. And they were going to pay for the 1,900 and change, and that the remainder of the flow they didn't need the remainder of the flow. So that flow reverts back to the authority.
So we end up with a net amount.
Yeah, like 1,000 left over.
So
Right. So in comparison, say Melmark did use all 25,000 gallons of their flow, and Stony Knoll was going through their planning module and there was no flow in the system, they would be in this similar situation that if Melmark needed the flow, they would have to go through the same processes by either, well, he either can't do the subdivision and or he can't do it by public sewer. He might have to do on lot, but he would have to either acquire the flow from CDCA, purchase the additional capacity, or look elsewhere within Newtown's system, i.e. evaluating the Goshen Road pump station and the Ashford pump station, looking at those chapter 94 reports, evaluating the number of connections that are into that system and what the actual flow is, and determining whether there's any residual capacity in the stations at that point, or upgrading those stations as part of the development, or constructing their own pump station and tying into this system elsewhere.
So this isn't their only option, but seems to be the most,
Right. Yeah,
Well-
by way of Melmark decreasing their required flow, there's residual that the authority could essentially assign, or the township could assign planning wise to them.
Yeah,
For
and
that project.
I would just make this note, for us, it's actually a positive. Okay, because we could potentially have 5,000 sitting out there that's not being paid for
right,
and
right.
not being used.
Yeah.
So we're going to pick up 4,000 of those. And so so we're going to get that number of 18 EDUs in payment. So that would be 18 EDUs that we may have waited a while to get based on infill and things like that. So I see it as a positive for us right now.
And how many EDUs or gallons per day did he need, or they need, when it was 27 units? You know, the
So that
relation-
number was 6,075 gallons.
So he had that?
Well, they were getting that through a couple different ways. Because the township has some, what we call infill units available. That are there for potential use. And so that would have been where it would have come from.
And our approval of this does nothing, other than say we have capacity, and first in the door gets that capacity allocated.
Correct.
And if the project doesn't get approved to 18 units, what happens to the
Then
4,000?
whatever capacity they end up using would be what it would. So let's say the board said you don't get 18, you get 17.
Ultimately, the 537 plan will be amended
To
to
according,
include whatever, to incorporate whatever's.
Okay, so we're just acknowledging Delcora and CDCA's availability.
you're acknowledging the availability that's within the township overall.
Right, so I think we can make a motion then to approve the chapter 94 capacity determination form in relationship to the Stony Knoll 18 lot subdivision and the reassignment of flow necessary for the completion of that project, and allow Stephen Neese to complete and sign that form based on the requested additional units and GDP associated with them. May I have a motion? I'll make the motion. Do I hear a second? Thanks, Steve.
One more question, now that we have a motion on the table. This allocation stays open for how long? Until it's used? Like, what if,
Till they purchase it.
I mean, we can make it conditioned upon township approval. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what
but
it
you're-
is.
You can't condition the
Yeah.
availability. This is just a capacity.
We're acknowledging the capacity is available
Today.
so
as
if
of
Belmar came in and said, I need 2,000 gallons,
And you
we'd
gave
say,
it to them, then we would let the township know that we don't have capacity.
got it, okay, very good. No more questions.
All right, I think we need a vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Old business. Dave, I think you gave us a preliminary description of the easement agreement for the swim club at 3615 Gradyville Road. Would that be you, or Mike, do you have anything on that in addition to what Dave's already told us. So.
I mean, I don't think there's a lot more to say about it. This is even if it was required for us to, have all the pieces to accept dedication on Muirwood. We require the easement, we need to execute it, I believe, still. And then we'll go ahead and get it filed. It's really a lead into the next, item.
And that's what I figured. So why don't we just make a motion at this point?
I don't know if there's any.
The only thing-
there's no action
The
required.
only action that's required is if you give me the authority to sign the document on your behalf,
Because we've already approved it.
because you've already approved it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, do you want us to put that on the record?
I guess if you're gonna give Steve authority to sign something. you should
All right.
have it.
So I'll make a motion to authorize Stephen Neese as our operations manager to execute the easement agreement for the swim club at 3615 Gradyville Road.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And then we have the issue of, next on the agenda, the dedication of the Muirwood sewer lines contingent upon final review and approval of the authority engineer and solicitor.
Yeah, so on this piece, I've reviewed the easement documents. I believe David reviewed them prior to my coming on board with you guys. This has been lingering for a while. So his comments were incorporated. I've reviewed the documents and approved them. We're waiting on originals. Because the parties who developed this thing have scattered. So somebody's in Florida and somebody somewhere else. So we need to get the originals back. And then we'll be able to get those filed and dedication will be.
Okay, so are we in a position to approve the
Just
dedication?
that,
at this point?
with the language on the agenda.
Okay, so may I have a motion to approve dedication of the Muirwood sewer lines contingent upon the final review and approval from the authorities, engineer and solicitor. May I have a motion? Thanks, Steve.
Second.
Thanks, Louis. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so discussion item on the refund policy. This is something we've been talking about, I think, for a couple of meetings and I don't know that we ever got the draft, right, in our packet.
You got a draft, I think, last month and Louis made some comments on it.
You know what? I did not see it and I apologize. I mean,
Yeah, we were gonna get a PDF or a Word document that we could redline.
Okay.
So
I'll
that's
have to
my
circulate
fault if
that.
I
That might
missed
be
it,
on me for not circulating it right when we left the last meeting.
all right. All right, so let's recirculate that as a Word doc so that we can. And that will bring us to, any other public comment at this point
I just have one open item before we go.
before we go to that? Okay.
So,
You don't want to keep it for next agenda stuff? or
no, it's related to what we're just talking about, in terms of a policy, but maybe hand in hand with that at the next, well, it is probably for the next meeting. I want to do a review of the receivables again, just to get a better feel from you and our finance director on where we are. I think it's going to be related to the policy that we wind up reviewing.
Okay, no.
That'll be great, because by that point, we'll have a better understanding. We're trying to set up a meeting with Portnoy so
Okay.
that we understand where Portnoy is in the
Good.
collection process. So if we can get that before the next meeting, we will
I
try
would
to do both.
actually love a report from Portnoy too.
Yeah,
I've been thinking
they've,
about
I will tell you, they've turned some stuff in, but it's been minimal right now, but we'll get back to you.
When you say turn stuff in, convert it to money.
Yeah, converted it to money. It's a direct deposit right into our account. Or into the authority account. But like when I say that, I think it's been probably close to about 10,000. So of what we've turned over. So obviously there's still a lot out there to collect.
Got it.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see what's been turned over to them in relationship to what we've received or whatever. So,
We can do
okay.
that.
All right, thank you. All right, so,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. Any other public comment? I see somebody was expressing some interest. Just state your name and your address and stand up at the podium because there's a microphone there.
Please make sure
the
microphone's
And press it so it turns green.
Now it's green.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie Grego. I'm a realtor with Coldwell Banker. I represent Adrian, Matt, Hal. They have a lot on Phillips Lane. I was here last year. The purpose is just to find out what's going on with the old master sewer in terms of their ability as sellers to correctly and with a certain amount of accuracy, fill out that seller's disclosure, which one out of its various items ask about legal matters. And then it asks about the sewer situation on your property. And they know they can't have septic at this point because they're awaiting, to be able to hook up to the sewer lateral. So that's my purpose for attending, because they'd like to list their lot.
Well, I'm gonna defer to our legal counsel.
Or, I think, you probably, heard and your eyes glossed over during Dave's report, that we're connecting the electric.
I
to-
heard a lot.
She was so enamored with his report.
Yeah,
She was
I
just
took
like,
many notes.
I know my eyes glossed over. I almost didn't get to that point before.
All exciting stuff.
But, that's really the last piece of the puzzle to get that pump station up and running. So once, we get the electric connected, I think we're gonna, test it out and, if everything goes according to plan, we're gonna start getting people connected to the sewers.
Okay, so this is something that
Imminent.
is imminent,
Mhm.
and then whatever the second lawsuit was has been resolved.
Well, I wouldn't say that everything's resolved. I'd say that everything's at a point where we're comfortable moving forward.
Good enough.
Yep.
That would be an accurate description of what's going on.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I was looking for, that they as sellers fairly represent what they're putting on the market.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so items for next agenda, I think there was something I wanted to.
Well, there's a refund policy.
The refund policy for sure,
There's
and I thought there was something else,
Lewis's receivables,
Lewis's receivables,
report from Portnoy.
report from Portnoy, but I thought there was something else, let me just see if my, blah, blah, blah.
ABX was gonna put together, or somebody was putting together
They're
that.
still working on that. Yeah, they're still working on that. I don't know how
Preventive
quickly that's
maintenance.
coming, but they're working on a timeline as well as what they would argue is the projection of what needs to be replaced.
Okay,
They were also gonna do a preventive maintenance checklist that they were gonna circulate to us.
What you have from the system is what they do. So if you want something more detailed than that, I can get that.
Okay,
What we sent out today,
okay.
okay?
all right, well, obviously, if I think of something, I'll let you know well in advance of the meeting, but.
Yep.
Okay, I think
And
that's,
we'll get whatever information you want. If there's other information you want, feel free to reach out to Steve and he'll make sure we start digging in and getting that.
okay, I think that's it. At this time, then we will adjourn the meeting. Meeting is hereby adjourned.